Let's do it.
Game balls and jock straps.
Shout out to Papa Aqua Ace, Josh's dad, for doing the voiceover on the Game Balls and Jockstraps for us. Absolutely awesome. Boys, this is a season-long Game Balls and Jockstraps, which means that you had to look at the entire year for these players before you decided to give them an award. That is quite a task. So I'm going to actually start with Keith. I'm going to give him the hardest task of all because he gets to start us off with his game ball.
My game ball of the season actually. Now I need to point out that we did like a draft, a round robin, a snake draft for this. And I got the last pick. Now that being said, this is a guy who I loved all season long, until he got hurt, and that's Austin Jackson. I thought Austin Jackson was playing the best football of his career, and it really manifested itself in the way the Dolphins were running the ball when Tua was out. When Tua was out, they were still a good running team, even though teams pretty much knew we couldn't throw the ball down the field on them. Austin Jackson played out of his mind, and then he got hurt. And then once Austin Jackson got hurt, you really saw it in the offense because our running game just kind of stalled. It kind of just went down to nothing. And we thought it was the Alec Ingold effect because Alec Ingold got hurt, and then he came back, and then Austin Jackson got hurt, and that was kind of happened simultaneously to the point where you thought, well, maybe Alec Ingold doesn't have it anymore or whatever. Alec Ingold was good. Austin Jackson really was a catalyst for the Dolphins running game that opened up a lot of what they wanted to do offensively. So it really showed me how good of a season Austin Jackson's having. And honestly, he was a guy that was left for dead by a lot of Dolphins fans a couple seasons ago. He was constantly hurt or he wasn't playing well. Austin Jackson has turned himself into in my opinion, borderline Pro Bowl right guard. And that's a testament to him. So this is offensive game balls and jock straps. My offensive game ball of the season goes to Mr. Austin Jackson.
I know you got the last pick of the snake draft on this, but man, you nailed it right out of the park.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, if I forgot to mention, it's offensive game balls and jock straps. Thank you, Keith, for clearing that up. Also, by the way, you gave yourself the last pick, so there's no
Well, I was trying to be magnanimous. I was trying to be nice.
You can't do that and then come on here and be like, "Well, guys, I had the last pick."
Well, in fairness, it was my fault. I will take this on the chin because I was like, "Guys, I need your game balls and jock straps. I'm taking Janu."
Yeah. That's exactly how it went down. Josh was like, "Game balls and jock straps, Janu right here." And so, okay,
made it worse.
We're doing this draft style. That means you get last pick in the jock straps then, Josh.
What made it worse, I initiated the conversation like, hey, should we probably get this ahead of time? And then Josh was like, yeah, we should.
Now
Anyways,
I'm
taking Jono.
Now you know he's going to cut right in front of you next time.
Hey, hey, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying in sports, ladies and gentlemen.
So, Josh, why don't you tell us more about this Jonnu Smith character?
Oh, no, I'm kidding. So my offensive season long Joshua, Jesus Christ. Game ball, not yet. My offensive season long game ball went to none other than Jonnu Smith, who was a revelation in this offense. I'm about to bore some people. I'm a stats guy. Receptions, he had 88, which ranked fourth among tight ends in the league this year. Receiving yards, he had 886. Also ranked fourth among tight ends. Receiving touchdowns, he had 8, which was second among tight ends in the NFL. 109 targets, which was fourth in the NFL. Yards per reception at 10.1, which put him at 7th in the NFL. Yards after the catch per reception was 5.9, 9th in the NFL. So far, top 10 across the board. Passer rating when targeted, 121.2, which was great. I think that ranked him. I'm sorry, I can't read my own writing. Ranked him at 23rd among tight ends, which is kind of shocking. I don't know if that math is mathing properly. Average depth of target was 5 yards, which was very low, all things considered. And the fact that he still had the numbers he did shows what kind of year he had. And he only had 4 drops, right? Which ranked him in the top 10. He had a standout season. I mean, I think the fact that we had a tight end come in who was much maligned at his previous couple stops. I mean, yeah, sure, he had a good season last year, an okay season at Atlanta. When he came from Tennessee and went to New England, he was hyped, right? And did not do anything for them for 3 years and collected $30 million, right? Good for him. But he broke multiple Miami Dolphins tight end records, historical records, right? He set the franchise records for both receptions and receiving yards this year for a tight end, and was very close on the receiving touchdowns one as well. Actually, I think he might have broken that in one of the last games, but don't quote me on that. Needless to say, he had an outstanding season. I hope to God. I don't know what his contract is. I think we have him for one more year. I hope it's not a player option. But I hope we re-up him in the offseason and lock him down for long term.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic season by Johnny Smith. I mean, there's not really much to add to that. He broke Dolphins records at tight end. I know we've talked about this before. We haven't had like the who's who list of tight ends, but we've had some decent ones. For him to break all those records in just his first season here, after admittedly a really tough start. I mean, his first 4.5 games as a Dolphin, he had backup quarterbacks.
Yeah. Well, and he the first 5 games, I think he only had just over 200 yards.
And at one point we commented on Jonnu, maybe in the first or second game of the season where he looked disengaged.
He was, yeah. First game of the season, he looked lost.
Yeah. And he really turned it around. So that's a testament to him.
And not for nothing, right? When you think of Jonnu Smith, you think of a receiving tight end, but his stats in the blocking game and in the run game were amazing. He was very, very good and ranked very high in those stats as well.
Yeah. And not only that, when also you consider, and this comes to the play calling thing, didn't really put him in the best position sometimes. We were running halfback tosses to him, and he was doing the most with it. So, yeah, put up absolutely insane stats, record-breaking for the franchise.
Unbelievable. Shout out to Austin Jackson and Johnny Smith so far, guys. 2 game balls that we've given out for our offensive season game balls here on the Fins Forecast. Next, we're going to go over to Taylor. Now Taylor, I forgot who your game ball was. I'm seeing it on the sheet. Now I realize why the offensive line talk you were so heavy in that. Why don't you hit us up with your offensive game ball for the season?
So my offensive game ball goes to Aaron Brewer. I said a lot of what I kind of feel about his season in our grades, but I mean, I think it really comes down to also Connor Williams leaving in the offseason, the fan base being like, man, we need a real center. We need a real center. And then we get this undersized center from Tennessee, and there's a lot of people talking about, oh, this is going to be a bust. He's not going to fit. He's going to get absolutely demolished. And what we see through the end of the season is a really dang good run blocker. He does struggle a little bit in the pass game, but I think he does more than enough to hold his own. The only issues I really have with his game are he has a few penalties that I wanted to clean up, and he did struggle down the stretch. Other than that, he more than exceeded my expectations, and it's been a long, long time since I've really been excited for a center on the Dolphins.
Yeah. Do you think his struggles down the stretch were him or the fact that he had 2 high school level guards on either side of him?
Well, he had that the whole season. So I think it also just has to do with the team struggles, towards the end of the season.
I think it was a breakdown too, Taylor. I think it was just Liam Eichenberg loses Austin Jackson, and then his play declines, and that kind of moved down to Aaron Brewer. Robert Jones loses Teron Armstead for some of the season. His play declines, and that moves down to Aaron Brewer. I don't put a lot of it on Aaron Brewer. A lot of his struggles towards the end of the season. I put it on the guards. I put it on the fact that you need guards that are able to stand on their own and don't have to rely on their outside tackle in order to thrive.
University of Texas. Excuse me, guys. Sorry.
Well, we'll talk. We have plenty of time for draft talk.
Yes,
Josh,
we do.
So let's not get into that just yet.
Premature draft talk.
Yeah, thank you, Taylor. So, guys, I'm honestly a little shocked. We have 2 offensive linemen on the game balls for the season. That either speaks loudly about how bad the rest of our skilled position players were, or it speaks loudly about how good the offensive line was, or it doesn't speak to any of that, and it just says that, well, we had to pick somebody, so we picked these 2. So I'm gonna end the game ball session with my boy at running back, Devon Achane. 1,499 yards. He couldn't get one more yard. Come on, MMD. You got to know that, man. You're a numbers guy. He doesn't get him that one more yard at the end of the season. But I got to say, man, this is an impressive season from a guy because the 4 games that Tua was out, or 5 games that Tua was out, he didn't break 100 yards in any of those games. He had really bad time without Tua behind center. And, of course, because nobody was scared of the quarterback. So everybody's just playing up against the line. And Achane really, really got hurt from that. But as soon as Tua comes back, Arizona game, 10 carries, 97 yards, 6 of 8 on targets for 50 yards, and he scores a touchdown in that game. I mean, it was like fantasy footballers must have just been in such a moment of rejoice that Devon Achane is back.
He's back, baby.
Because absolutely incredible. So I say that because it's important to point out that the 4 games, because he did well in Buffalo and Tua was playing against Buffalo and Achane did well in that game, but against Seattle, 58 yards, no touchdown. Against Tennessee, 29 yards, no touchdown. In New England, he only had 19 yards. I think he got hurt in that one. Taylor mentioned that before.
Yeah.
And then Indianapolis was his best game of the group without Tua, where he had 77 yards rushing and 8 yards receiving. So he had 85 yards. And again, though, no touchdowns. So for him to put together a 907 yards rushing, 592 yards receiving, for those who are not very good at math, that's 1,499 yards total, along with 6 touchdowns receiving and 6 touchdowns rushing. That's 12 total touchdowns. Absolutely phenomenal. I'm kind of bummed he didn't make the Pro Bowl. I'm not kind of bummed. I'm super bummed he didn't make the Pro Bowl because this is a very deserving season for a running back to make the Pro Bowl, and I feel bad for him.
Yeah, like you said, Anthony, Devon Achane was probably our top offensive weapon all season long. Even more so than Jonnu, more so than Tyreek.
Yeah.
You know, he was our rock. So yeah, he certainly deserves the game ball, probably of the entire offense, in my opinion.
Yeah, of the 3 that we mentioned, I think Achane was the best player of the 4 rather that we mentioned.
Yeah, and I still don't think he's reached his potential. That's the thing. Like, what's so special about Achane, I think, is his adaptability to play running back and wide receiver. Where it's not like, oh, he needs 20 carries. No, he needs 20, 25 touches. It doesn't matter how he gets it. Like, this dude needs to get the ball.
Taylor's going to straight stay on that, banging that drum. Put him at wide receiver. Put him at wide receiver.
Put him at wide receiver.
I mean, he's not wrong. Achane only had 20-plus carries one time. And that was against Buffalo in week 2.
But
all the way back in week 2.
And he's not built to carry the ball 20 times a game.
Right.
No, that's
and I will say that's the only thing about him that I'm not a fan of.
Yeah.
It's the fact that he can't be an every down back. He shouldn't be. I mean, he can be if that's all we have.
He does have the mindset for it, though. That's
not a knock on him.
But he's not a Saquon Barkley. He's not a Derrick Henry. You know,
he's not a
Derrick Henry.
You know, we need a power back, right? Because Achane is amazing, unless we need 1 yard.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
and now that you can say, okay, that's an offensive line problem too, which that is a completely valid statement, right?
Hey, but this is game balls, not jock straps. Let's keep the negativity to ourselves, boys.
I like it. It. Sorry.
But I did want to mention that in the final game of the season, McDaniels was preserving him. He didn't really play a lot. He only had 11 carries, no targets, no receptions, and he still had 78 catches on the year. That's with a game where he didn't have a single target. So phenomenal year for Achane. Can't say enough good things. Definitely might get an Achane jersey, and then he'll get hurt next year. So maybe I'll wait till he's done next year, and then I'll get the Achane jersey. I don't know. All right, since I'm already talking, let me start off with my jock strap here. I think, Keith, you normally do it this way, and I like the way you do it, so I'm going to copy you. My jock strap for the season is none other than our fearless leader, number 1 in your books and potentially number 1 in your hearts, depending on what kind of fan you are. That's Tua Tagovailoa. Very surprised to hear that Josh also had Tua, but he missed out on him because he was last in the jockstraps selection process. So I get to talk about Tua, and I thought this was going to be a surprise. So Josh, you ruined it because it wasn't a surprise. All right.
Sorry, I ruined
everything. We've talked about this a lot. I'm not going to go on, this huge tangent. Why do I have Tua as a season-long jockstrap? It's because he's injured again. Listen, that hit he took against Buffalo was completely unnecessary. First of all, you had the first down already, just slide. Second of all, why are you diving head first when you're a person who struggles with concussions? Like, just use your head and not in that manner. Use it in like a mental capacity, not a physical capacity. And listen, I have really big questions about why he chose to change his body again. 2 years ago, he decides, I'm going to go practice jujitsu because I'm getting hurt too much, right? I need to learn how to fall. I'm going to build some muscle. I'm going to get bulked up. Last year, he goes, hey, that really worked. I played 17 games. Let's change it. I'm actually going to lose the weight, and I'm going to see how that works.
Scramble more.
I want to scramble more. Bro, you are slow. I don't want to see you scramble no matter what weight you are. like, come on. And then inevitably what happens? He gets hurt. I think he only plays, 11 games this season, something like that. One 17-game season from a guy we literally just paid $50 million a year to be our quarterback really, really doesn't sit well with me. And it's on him. And I was so happy in that press conference to hear Chris Grier call Tua out. Because my goodness, guys, if we're not going to call Tua out, nobody's going to call Tua out, right? If you, Mike McDaniel, and you, Chris Grier, are not going to say, hey, Tua, if you're not on the field, we suck, then who's going to say it?
Yeah.
So Tua gets my jockstrap because he wasn't on the dang field. And yeah, he played pretty well when he was on the field, but that doesn't matter because it was already too late. We were 2-6 or something like that. And then when it came time to win in big games, guess what? He still couldn't win in big games. So let's add another thing onto the negativity charm here because we are in jockstraps.
to be fair, he won that Rams game and the Rams are still in it. I don't put the Texans game on him.
I don't put the Kansas City loss on him either. That's squarely on Tyreek Hill dropping two or three touchdowns.
If you get credit for the wins, you get credit for the losses too.
That's a whole other conversation. Yeah.
Listen,
it's fair to give him your jockstrap, Anthony. I'm not, I totally agree with you there.
And I completely understand the other side of the argument here there are literally YouTube highlights or lowlights, I guess, of how many times Tyreek Hill has dropped the dang ball. Yeah. I mean, the Houston game was beyond frustrating watching your superstar wide receiver not be able to make a conversion where Tua's pinpointing it right in his chest.
And my favorite part is when he drops the ball, he's like, why are you looking at your gloves, dude? That had nothing to do with your gloves.
The problem I still have, though, is that he's never going to overcome this mantra that he can't stay healthy or this idea that he's not a winner until he does it, right? We go to Seattle. It was Seattle, right? We go to Seattle where Mike McDaniel and Tua are talking to the media about how they love stuff in the media like that. Like what is that called? Somebody help me out with words.
Controversy.
So. Not controversy, but like they love this idea that they can't play in the cold. They love this idea that narratives, right? Yes. They go this whole huge thing about narratives, and then what do? They don't show up in Seattle. It's just like. I can't anymore, man. I want a winner at quarterback. I don't care if you're accurate. I don't care if you have the strongest arm in the NFL. I don't care if you're the fastest guy in the NFL. If you are not a winner, then it doesn't do anything for us as fans because the only time we're truly happy is when we're winning, and we haven't been winning for a very long time. Okay. I will breathe for a second and see if you guys have anything to say about that before I pass it on.
Well, I think you're absolutely right, Anthony. I mean, Tua is our franchise guy, and we can't, we talked all this crap on Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle and, Snoop Huntley. And we talked all, these guys are backup quarterbacks. We're not supposed to win with our backup quarterback in there. Tua needs to be a guy that plays 17 games. If he can't turn into that guy, then we need to talk about moving on from him. And that breaks my heart because I love Tua.
Love him.
Yeah, well, if we don't do it this offseason, it's going to be real hard to do. I'm just hate to break it to you guys.
Got a jersey hanging in my closet, and I don't really have many jerseys for the Dolphins because
it's a tough thing too because Tua is such a great quarterback when on the field. He has qualities in the leadership position. He's shown progression in so many ways that it's just more of a frustrating rant whenever you're going off. And I completely get you. Like, you just want him to be available. That's the biggest problem. And you can see, okay, if you're available for 17 games, we're going to win games. It's just the way it's going to work, seeing his last, 3 seasons with the team.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Taylor, your jockstrap kind of coincides with mine. So
that's what I was
why don't you go right into it, bud?
I was about to segue right into it because my jockstrap is Tyreek Hill. I did say he had a bad season this season, and I kind of feel like I undersold it. It's a lot. It's less of honestly him having a bad season because I understand he had multiple injuries. He had a wild beginning to his season, and it has nothing to do with what happened in week 1. But throughout the entire season, he has been nothing but a distraction. When it comes to social media posts, trolling people, Teddy Bridgewater wins a title as a high school coach. So he goes and tweets out, "It's time for me to go, coach." So national media is like, "Is he wanting to trade?" No, I was just trolling people saying maybe I should go coach a high school football team. Dude, we got enough problems on the team. Like, why are you adding fuel to the fire? And you're also not playing good enough to justify your trolling.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what bothers me the most. And honestly, going to the last 2 seasons of him on the team, I just don't understand what you're doing, man, because you were an exceptional leader for this team. What you did for Tua when you got here was 10 out of 10, no notes. Like, you backed your quarterback, said, "Nah, y'all are wrong about this guy, and we're going to show you." And that's what they did for 2 seasons. And then 2024 happens. And I don't know Tyreek Hill. I don't know how he really feels. I can only tell you what my perception of him is right now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he wants to be there.
No.
I haven't gotten that feeling the entire season. I don't care. Like I said about his route running, I feel like it's been lackluster compared to previous seasons. I feel like his effort has been lackluster compared to the last few seasons. And the drops have gotten really bad, and they were already bad. Like you guys talked about the Kansas City game last year. That was one that was Tyreek Hill's fault, but it got even worse this season.
Yeah, the thing that annoyed me the most about that Kansas City game is like everybody starts immediately popping off narratives and popping off on Tua, and it's like, bro, he hit Tyreek in the end zone at least twice, if not 3 times. That's a very different game if his receiver can catch the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's why I have such a hard time with the discussion. Well, if quarterbacks get the credit for winning games, they should also get the credits for losing games. And I know, Anthony, that was a throwaway for you, but I've had discussions with fans, and it's like, well, this is a team sport. Tua didn't win us the game, but he also didn't lose us the game. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, in those games, like Kansas City, and I keep going back to that one because that was a big one that I wanted. That was not solely on Tyreek Hill, but you had 2 touchdowns to that score, we win the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And those touchdowns, one of them, okay, maybe. It was a little high, a little off to the left, or a little off to the right. Okay, cool. That second one, though, hit him right in the numbers, and he was wide open. And there was nobody around him. And he just, oops, and the ball was on the ground. And I'm sorry, like, you can't demand the amount of attention and the amount of money that you want and that you got, and then demand it to get re-upped because you want to stay in the conversation as one of the top paid wide receivers and then put a product on the field like you did this season. Get out of my building. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, there are certain guys that you go into a season and you think, this guy's act is getting a little old. And that's kind of how I felt going into the season. His act is getting a little old. His me mentality is getting to be a little bit old, and he was a pretty ideal teammate throughout his first 2 years here. Anthony, you pointed it out a couple times, 1,700 yards in each of his first 2 seasons with the Dolphins. This season, the crack started to show, though, and it's got to the point for me where it's like the juice isn't worth the squeeze anymore.
Yeah, and I think what bothers me the most with Tyreek Hill is that when he was being force-fed the ball, trying to get to that 2,000-yard mark, he was engaged.
Yeah.
Right? And the minute that he came out and said, we're not going to do that anymore, I'm more of a team player, is when he completely did a 180 and pooped the bed in every aspect that he possibly could, both from a social media standpoint, the way he was interviewing, what he was saying in those interviews, and how he was producing on the field. And I'm sorry, that shows me that Tyreek Hill is, in fact, a me player. He is not a team player. There is no I in team, but according to him, there is an M and an E. So, it's one of those things where it sucks because Tyreek Hill, I still think, is a top 5 wide receiver in this league, and I don't think there's a conversation to be had there.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is what we talked about on our last show. There's redundancy at the position, and we just paid Waddle. I think it's time for us to move on, transition Waddle into Hill's role, and get us a big body wide receiver.
I think my favorite talking head reaction to this was Jesse Palmer and Steve Smith have a show, and Palmer says to Smith, well, it seems like Tyreek is, first time losing season in his life. He's having a bit of a fit, and just Steve Smith didn't even have to say anything because he was on so many losing teams. His face was just the whole story, and it was so good. I was like, you don't even need to see anything, bro. You don't even need to say anything because your face tells the whole. All right. Josh, why stop here, bud? Keep on talking. Who is your jockstrap for the season?
Yeah, so mine goes to Mr. Rob Jones. The legend himself. I think a conversation could be had of who was the worst offensive lineman. For me personally, I don't think it's close. I think he was the worst offensive lineman over everyone that we had play this year outside of that one game that one undrafted rookie from
Jackson Carman was a beast. Okay,
his name again.
Excuse me.
We're gonna let it go.
Sorry, guys.
Just throw in the Jackson Carman slander again. Our GM's already done that.
Yeah, right. Talk about how heavy that bus is. But anyway, so Rob Jones, right? So I'm a stats guy, like I did with Johnny Smith. Sit back for a second. Here we go. Overall grade. This is per PPF or PFF. Sorry. Overall grade was a 56.1, which ranked him 94th out of 135 qualifying guards.
That's pretty good.
Okay. Pass blocking grade, 54.3, which ranked him 89th. Run blocking grade. Hold on to your.
This has to be last.
Are you ready for this? 56.3, ranking him 97th out of 135. In terms of penalties and sacks, okay, he committed 7 penalties, ranking him 113th out of 135 guards. And he allowed 5 sacks, putting him at 116th. Bad across the board. I mean, just a bad player, right? Not for this. Like I said, Rob Jones, I'm playing both sides of the coin here. Excuse me, guys. He was put in a position that does not justify where he should be. He was starting when he should be our 7th, 8th, 9th, backup to the backup type player. That is who Rob Jones is. Okay. That is who he is. The fact that he was starting is concerning. Now the conversation could be had. Well, why is he starting? And we already had that conversation. Go back and check our last week's show. But you look at the product, nonetheless, he was on the field. He has to be held accountable. We believe in accountability on the show, fellas. And he was not good. He was not good all season. He was not good last season. He's not going to be good next season. So hopefully he's somewhere else.
Well, he was undrafted for a reason, I guess.
And
somehow made it into our starting lineup. I don't know what that says about our talent evaluators.
That's a fair point. So watch next week's show.
By the way, he played left guard, and Liam Eichenberg played right guard, and I think Keith knows a little something about him.
I do. Liam Eichenberg was my jockstrap of the season. Now, look, Liam Eichenberg played okay-ish football until Austin Jackson went out.
Mm-hmm.
And then once Austin Jackson went out, he was exposed. Thing is, this guy has been with the Dolphins for the past 4 seasons. He was a 2nd-round pick. Dolphins tried him out at tackle. They tried him out at center. They settled him in at right guard and said, you have the right guard spot. Go ahead and take it and run with it. And you can't let your play fall off because you're missing the guy on the right side. That's an indictment on him. That's an indictment on shows how good of a player he is, but it's also an indictment on you that one guy goes out and your play falls to pieces.
Mm-hmm.
In the running game, in the passing game, he just was not a good player this season, and I'm ready to move on from him. So, he got my jockstrap. There's plenty of criticism to go around for this Dolphins offense. I think that's the main theme we're talking about here, guys, where it's like all season long, we criticized Tua for getting hurt. We criticized Tyreek Hill for having key drops, or the offensive line for not blocking correctly, or Raheem Mostert for having a key fumble, Al Gingold for having a key fumble. This was a disappointing season for the Dolphins offense as a whole.
Yeah.
Plenty of criticism to go around. So look, guys, we're getting up to the hour and 45-minute mark here. We've talked about offense. We're going to get into defense next week. Next Wednesday, we're going to get into defense. So I'm just going to get right into final thoughts from you guys. Anthony, you have any final thoughts for us here?
Yeah, I did want to mention that if you guys have your game balls and jockstraps, please leave them again in the comments below, because we love reading your comments. So would love to get your thoughts on game balls and jockstraps for sure. Also, how do you like the segment? Because we've been having a lot of fun making it. So really looking forward to bringing it back next year. We have one more episode with it though, so looking forward to that.